The grand opening night of La Couronne was the kind of event that newspapers would later describe in shimmering adjectives, where every detail was meant to scream of wealth, exclusivity, and refined power, from the way the crimson carpet stretched in a perfect line toward the gilded entrance to the way the doormen in immaculate uniforms tipped their hats as black cars purred to a stop and spilled out the city's most elite figures. And within those towering doors lay a ballroom transformed into a palace of culinary ambition, chandeliers raining light like falling stars, polished marble floors glistening like mirrors beneath the heels of society's most powerful, and every corner filled with the scent of roasted garlic, butter, herbs, truffles, and champagne so crisp it practically sparkled in the air itself. But amid the clinking of glasses, the quiet laughter of politicians, celebrities, and business magnates leaning over tables covered in velvet cloth, there was one presence that made the very air tighter, a man whose arrival had silenced conversations and whose reputation carried weight heavier than the chandeliers themselves, Charles Moreau, the billionaire with silver threaded into his dark hair and a gaze that cut like steel wrapped in velvet, a man who could buy nations with a pen stroke yet who had flown into the city not for a deal or a gala but for a single meal, because he had heard whispers, legends even, of a chef who claimed to rival the gods of cuisine, a Frenchman whose ego was as large as the posters plastered across culinary magazines, Chef Laurent Dubois. The staff of La Couronne had worked themselves nearly to collapse preparing for this night, and though the maitre d' strutted with an air of perfection, inside the kitchen walls was another world entirely, one where heat rose in suffocating waves from copper pans, knives clattered against cutting boards, and voices barked in overlapping notes of panic, and at the center of this storm was not the famed chef himself but Marcus, the quiet black kitchen helper who most guests never even noticed existed, the man who chopped onions until his eyes burned, who washed mountains of dishes long after the restaurant closed, who took every insult and every sneer from Chef Laurent as though his skin was armor, though in truth each word sliced deep into old scars of being dismissed, ignored, and underestimated his entire life. Marcus had grown up with dreams so vivid they once felt inevitable, dreams of culinary school, of studying the art of flavor the way some men studied music, dreams of standing in a kitchen where his name was carved into menus and his creations were served on silver plates to people who closed their eyes in delight, but life, with its merciless hands, had shoved responsibility onto him when he was barely 18, when his mother grew sick and his younger siblings looked to him with wide, hungry eyes, and instead of moving to Paris with a scholarship he had been offered, Marcus had stayed in the city, taking job after job in restaurants where he never made it beyond the rank of helper, where his talent was overlooked and smothered beneath the weight of prejudice and arrogance, and La Couronne was no different, for Laurent Dubois treated him as a shadow, someone to carry pans and scrub floors, and yet Marcus's hands, roughened by years of labor, carried the memory of spices, the rhythm of seasoning, the instinct of balance that no school could teach, and it was those instincts that had surged forth tonight when Laurent, in a fit of fury after a dispute with one of the investors, had stormed out of the kitchen leaving only chaos behind, barking a few incoherent orders before vanishing into the luxury of his private office, abandoning his brigade in the middle of the most important night of their careers. Panic rippled through the younger cooks, plates nearly toppled, sauces oversalted, timing shattered, and in that instant Marcus did what he had always done in the privacy of his own home, when he cooked for his siblings with whatever scraps he could afford. He took charge, not with arrogance but with calm, tasting a sauce here, adjusting the heat of a pan there, lifting a hand to steady a trembling line cook, his voice steady and low, "Too much time, ease it back. No, not that plate, this one, keep the garnish even," and to their own surprise, the others obeyed, because there was something about Marcus's movements, the surety of a man who knew what he was doing, that cut through the storm of doubt, and by the time the waiters swept the plates out toward the glittering ballroom, each dish was a masterpiece that whispered of depth and harmony beyond the recipes Laurent had dictated, and though Marcus wiped sweat from his brow and returned to scrubbing pans as though nothing had happened, inside the ballroom Charles Moreau tasted in silence, his face unreadable, his fork lifting with ritual precision as though each bite were a contract he was inspecting. The other guests fawned, laughed, and raised toasts, but the billionaire said nothing until the final dish was cleared away, and then he set down his utensils with the finality of a gavel striking wood, folded his napkin, and in a voice that cut through the music and laughter with the authority of thunder he said, "I would like to meet the chef," and in that moment the entire room froze, glasses halted halfway to lips, forks suspended, the managers paling because they knew what the guests did. Not that the chef whose name was plastered across magazines and billboards had not cooked a single dish tonight, that the genius they had promised was locked away in his office too proud to soil his hands, and in that silence thick enough to choke on, all eyes flicked toward the maitre d', who stammered and sweated, trying to invent words that would satisfy a man no one dared to disappoint, while inside the kitchen Marcus's heart pounded like a drum in his ribs, for though he had never sought the spotlight, he knew the truth would either remain buried forever or step into the light, and as the seconds stretched like an eternity, he felt a strange fire rising in him, the defiance of a man tired of being invisible, tired of letting others steal the work of his hands, and while the staff shifted nervously and the managers whispered excuses about the chef being momentarily indisposed, Marcus untied his apron, each tug at the knot feeling like cutting loose the chains of years of silence. And he walked slowly toward the swinging doors that separated the heat of the kitchen from the cold glitter of the ballroom, his palms slick but his chin lifted, and when the doors opened and he stepped into the golden light, the gasp that rose from the crowd was sharp enough to slice through crystal, for no one expected that the man answering Charles Moreau's summons, the man claiming the food that had silenced the billionaire, would be the quiet black kitchen helper they had overlooked all evening, and yet Marcus did not falter. He stood there, eyes steady, as the weight of the room bore down on him, and though his throat was dry, he spoke the words that could not be unsaid, "Sir, I cooked your meal."